right. Looks like oh, thank you. Appreciate it. Looks like we are good to go. So, we're going to talk about artificial intelligence. So, how many of you are artificially intelligent? Okay, that's not what we're talking about. We'll talk about some artificial intelligence and whether or not we need to be prepared to run when the robots take over the world. So, eschatology. There's actually something related to this, but we'll see how far we can get into this. I think where we need to start about this discussion is talking about what is artificial intelligence. When we're talking about that exactly, some of you who are more in the technological world might say, well, technically there are different variations of what we're talking about. We're going to talk mainly much more broadly today, and I think it's going to help us when we discuss it this way, because we're going to talk about principles and things to watch out for. But to define it, I asked artificial intelligence to define itself. Maybe a methodological problem there. But this is how ChatGPT defined artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence refers to the development of computer systems or machines that can perform tasks that typically require human intelligence. These tasks include learning, reasoning, problem solving, understanding natural language, perceiving the environment, and more. AI, that's the artificial intelligence, AI aims to simulate human intelligence and cognitive abilities in machines. So the key thing to focus on there, I wonder if I can actually highlight on my screen. Nope. Oh, yes, I can. Watch this. The key thing to focus on here is it aims to simulate human intelligence. So it basically will try to mimic, without even really knowing what it's doing in some degree, the idea is to mimic or to simulate human cognitive process, all right? So we'll talk about what that means going forward then, but I want to give you just an example of one of the first times I heard of AI. This was back in, I think 2018 or 19. This article comes from 2020, but there was an AI program called AlphaZero, and they started to train it on chess, and it started to do things that were just completely ridiculous. If you've ever played chess before, or if you've seen somehow, now listen, there's a difference between how most people play chess and then how the grandmasters play chess, all right? They just are, they oftentimes will have 40 different variations memorized down to the line, and so they know what to do. And what AI would do is it trained itself how to play chess. So it knew the rules and everything, and then so it computed, okay, based on what typically will happen in this pattern, I think we should make this move. Now, normally the way chess engines typically work is they just calculate everything, and then they make the move. But AlphaZero was different because it said, okay, based on pattern recognition and based on what I know typically happens in this kind of scenario, this is the move that we should make. And it really became the, as the article says, the undisputed champion of computer chess, which is totally different than how the normal chess computing engines worked. And so it started to, even very early on, started to show people, hey, there's actually some interesting capabilities. And so the top chess players began to study AlphaZero's games. And I remember one of the best chess players in the world, Magnus Carlsen, in an interview, he said, basically when I play chess, the question I ask is, what would AlphaZero do? It's kind of like how we ask, what would Jesus do? Well, for a chess, they would ask, what would AlphaZero do? Like, what kind of chaos would AlphaZero try to create, understanding that this is a good winning opportunity? So right out of the gate, this began to impact the way that people started to process things, even as simple as a game, right? Now let's think in an unrelated field here. Let's think photography. So is this photo real? Is this photo real? Now, the very fact that I'm asking that question would probably, you would assume yes, but the fact that I'm asking you, you know how trick questions work. So there's probably something wrong here. But this was the winner of the 2023 Sony World Photography Awards. But it turned out the individual who submitted it, Boris Eldgenson, he refused the award because he admitted that he had been a cheeky monkey, his words, and generating the prize-winning image using artificial intelligence. In fact, if I remember correctly, he used 50 different variations just running it through AI to make it look like it was a real photograph, but technically it was all artificial intelligence. Now, this is an old photo. This is from, basically it's from 2022, being used for 2023 the Sony Photography Awards. But if you look at even some of the other photographs that have come out over time, you see similar things where you wonder, is it real or not? All right, so let's just forget that for a second. Okay, I want to show you some real photos now. All right, so these are real photos that I just think it's good to take breaks every once in a while and just talk about something else. So I'm going to show you some historical events that have been captured by photo. Okay. So a lot of people don't know this, but Trump and Churchill were very good friends. And I believe Trump's birthday was after 1933, but before he was born, he was actually photographed with Winston Churchill. And yeah, very, very realistic looking. So historically, he has some good pedigree there. And a lot of people don't know this, but Trump actually ran in the 1936 Olympics, did very well. Did very well, I might add. It's just, he did great, so a lot of things. Here he is being instrumental in the knocking down of the Berlin Wall. You didn't realize that we're so fortunate to have somebody as our president who has done so much in his life, right? And just some people think that Trump's not able to have fun, but here he is with Taylor Swift singing on the Eras tour, and it's not only is he able to have a good time, be instrumental on the world stage, but also on the intergalactic stage. He also has secured peace deals with some of the alien invaders. Now, obviously, none of those photos actually happened, but I would say that most of us, myself included, are other than the fact that we know it's not possible to have a picture like that, we wouldn't be able to tell technically that picture is inaccurate. And these are years old. In fact, even if you just bring it up to today, the photo generation capability of AI has gotten so much better even. So I think these photos I just got 2 years ago, and as I was looking back, I was thinking, wow, that's already ancient technology compared to what AI is capable of doing now with photo generation. But it's not just photo generation. It's also involving video generation as well. So take a look at these. I have 2 videos here. This is, let's see, here we go.
Green right now. Some of them are real, and some of them are AI generated. I saw Marquez do this in one of his
recent videos. It's just a collage of all these different videos.
Sora,
can you tell that maybe sometimes there's a little something that shows up here, but most of these
video generation,
you would be not able to tell that they are that they're video generated by AI.
Right now, some of them are real, and some of them are
AI
generated.
So you just watch it, and you say, okay, yeah, that looks like something I would see in a movie or a film. That is very unlikely that a dog would be able to surf that way, but it looked realistic, at least as far as the photography. And then just to celebrate what we're doing here today, I asked AI on Thursday to create a video of a Bible teacher teaching at a men's breakfast. All right, so you ready what that looks like? So just a random, that's all I said is I said, give me a video of a guy teaching at a men's breakfast. And I said, have bacon and eggs on the table. All right, so this is what it gave me. So that's all just, and that's not even the best video generator. It was like a free video generator. And so that, realistically, most people wouldn't be able to tell that something was wrong. Now, if you go back and look, there are a few things that are kind of odd about it. Like, for example, you can see the lady in red in the background. She actually stands up out of nowhere. So it's just like, you probably couldn't tell because you're probably watching the front guy, but if you were looking in the background, all of a sudden you see this lady in red stand up out of nowhere, and you're like, where did she come from? It was like, well, she just appeared because it's totally generated by AI. So the capabilities of AI have really, really gotten better over the years, and they're just going to keep getting better. I mean, there's no reason why there's a plateau or anything like that right now. The assumption is that these things are just going to keep getting better. So I'm just trying to give you a broad survey of the different areas of life that are impacted by AI. There's very few aspects of life that are going to be untouched by this kind of capability. Now, one of my favorite venues of AI is actually what they call large language model AI. So a large language model would be something like ChatGPT, Google Bard, Llama was Meta's version. They're basically defined as a sophisticated artificial intelligence system that can understand, interpret, and generate human-like text based on input it receives, thanks to its extensive training and vast number of parameters. So what that means is that based on its training, it's able to assume how a human being would respond to a certain input and then make that kind of response. So the way that it's been trained is that it's given a significant amount of data. In fact, some of these models have been trained on over 200,000 books, and then the entire internet, and then depending on which version of AI it is, maybe like OpenAI has a contract with Reddit to be able to kind of see how people interact on social media. Grok has all of X to pull from for the social media. So you have all this training being utilized from books, websites, databases. And so based on what somebody will prompt and talk about or ask AI to do, it'll say, okay, based on this discussion, we know in context based on our training that this is what's going to happen and this is what the user requires or wants to see. And so it's essentially a game of probability. I mean, at its core, that's essentially what it is. Based on these words in this order, in this context, this is what this individual is looking for. And so it's playing that game, and it gets better as it gets to know you. So for example, whenever I go onto my AI app or whatever and I talk about something, it knows that I'm going to be talking about biblical interpretation or historical analysis or something related to artificial intelligence. I'm not going to be asking it usually about like Picasso or things like that. It's like that; those things don't typically come up in my conversations. So if I just throw out a phrase, it'll say, okay, based on who the user is, it's talking about this, and so let's show them this kind of understanding. Here's an example from an article that was published in the Atlantic last year, talking about how one of the Meta's version of AI was trained. So Meta's version had been trained on 170,000 titles, and I thought it was interesting that 90 books were from, this is from the article, young earth creationist Pastor John MacArthur, which I thought was interesting. It's like out of all the things he could be known for, that he was recognized as a young earth creationist, and that was supposed to be the big, and the point of the article is we can't trust AI all the time because it was trained on some material from a young earth creationist. And we know that that's stupid, so why would we trust, it's like, okay, well, realistically, that's kind of problematic. So here's some examples of what LLM might look like. So this is something I did just recently. I'm delivering a lecture on AI tomorrow. Please give me an 8-line poem about the advantages of using AI in daily life. All right, so this is what it came up with, and I didn't do it again. I just said, okay, one shot, this is what it is. So it was titled An Ode to AI in Daily Life. AI, a helper both swift and wise, turning tasks simple with no compromise. It plans our routes, finds answers fast, streamlining chores to make joy last. It learns our needs, adapts, refines, saving us hours, crossing deadlines. From health to work, it lights the way, a partner to brighten every day. Don't you just feel warm and fuzzy inside now? I do. Yeah, it's, what I did to celebrate our 10th year anniversary, which was, our 12th year is this year, so our 10th year, I had AI compose a poem to celebrate that. And, I just told my wife, this is from AI, from me to you. And she appreciated it. But I did sleep outside that night. No, I'm just kidding. AI does have, poetry. It fits really well with English poetry. It kind of understands. Now, sometimes you might say, this doesn't work very well. But most of the time, it just does really well. And it just understands, okay, based on what the user wants, this is what would be refined. Now, here's some advantages that AI would have for us as Christians. So now, kind of giving you the broad survey of possibilities, I want to show you some actual uses. Many of these things I use it for. So one thing would just be checking for grammar and spelling. So, it can be very awkward sometimes depending on what spell error you make or grammar error, whether you eat grammar or not. There's a famous meme about that where whether you have the right comma depends on whether you're eating grandma or whether you are wanting to eat, grandma. And so AI helps you avoid those kinds of mistakes. And so that's one big advantage. It's basically assessing your writing then in contrast with all of the data sets it's been trained on. So, and it's better, it's making the grammar checkers much better now, because in the past, you basically had to have everything explicitly programmed, but now it looks for patterns. And so it's a lot more accurate with regard to that. One of the things that's really helpful is just for brainstorming ideas. I remember after giving an AI lecture one time, a lady told me that she was starting a firearm training company. She had been in security services or something, and so she was starting a training company, and she just didn't know what to call it. So she just ran through AI saying, give me 50 ideas for a company name that specializes in this. Boom, gave her 50 ideas. She took a couple, checked them, made sure nobody had them, and then she ran with it. And so just giving really, really good ideas. A lot of times what I'll use it for when I'm teaching actually is when I know what I want to say, a lot of times what I'll say is, okay, I want to teach this. Give me 5 different illustrations that I could use in this kind of context. And then sometimes it's, that's a perfect illustration. I want to use that, so I'll use it, and then I'll adapt it, of course, or whatever. I don't like going off notes too closely. But one of the things that happens is when you read the brainstormed ideas, sometimes you won't use those, but they prompt other ideas in your head, and you just say, oh, well, that makes perfect sense. So those kinds of things are really advantageous. And that way you don't need to have friends either. You can just bounce everything off AI. So for people like myself, I just don't want to avoid personal contact. So another thing that AI has made vast improvements on is the audio-video editing. A lot of times when I do my podcast, for example, sometimes I'll record on Zoom with people, with guests, and one of the things with the AI capabilities is that it's going to help clean up the audio automatically. So a lot of times I'll just drop it into the Adobe formatting, and they'll say, okay, this is what we're cleaning up. They'll auto adjust the levels and everything, and it sounds way better than it did normally. And I'm a terrible I am not an audio engineer at all, but with AI, all things are possible. But it's just it sounds way better than it otherwise would, and that again, what would take an audio engineer maybe hours takes AI 5 minutes. Another thing that I'm really excited about for Christians would be with translation. In fact, I was reading one of my friends that I knew in California when I was there has been working with Masters Academy International to help set up AI as an aid to some of their Bible translators. And what it does, basically, obviously, AI is not inerrant, but what it does often is it allows this large processing of languages. So you could take any kind of language, for example, and you have AI train itself on that data set, and then you train it on English or Greek or Hebrew or however you want to function that, and then you can say, okay, based on how Greek or Hebrew is functional in this area, and based on how this Indonesian dialect is functional over here, how would the translation best be here? And then so you can get a first level translation done very effectively, and then you have somebody come along and edit it and say, okay, this is probably not the best way to say it, we could say it a little better here. But that's way better. It's easier to be an editor than it is to be a composer in that regard. And so it really does help smooth out some of those processes. Another thing that AI helps with a lot is just with mundane automation. Some of the things that you can do is you can schedule tasks saying, every day give me, something as simple as like every day give me an accumulation of news articles in this field focusing on this thing. I mean, that's just really kind of neat to see. You could have AI schedule emails, do all sorts of things like that, just really help function like a assistant in that regard, an administrative assistant. One of the things that AI made a lot of headlines over was its medical diagnostics. And one of the, I don't have a slide for this, but one of the things I was reading recently, and I may have included this in the book, I can't remember or not, but I remember reading about an app that you could use that, you just have your phone, you could show it on your face, and with, I think it was like something like 85% accuracy could predict if you were having a stroke or not, just by looking at your face and being able to analyze what was going on with your features. In fact, AI, or at least most of the models now, I think all the models now, can actually pass all the medical doctoral exams. So if you think about what, and I've used it multiple times with things that I'm feeling like symptoms, or with my kids or anything. A lot of times I'll just ask AI, say, okay, these are the symptoms, what are the possibilities? And a lot of times it'll just give a good bird's eye view of what's possible for sickness and what's going on, and then you can fine tune and work from there. So there's a lot of really neat possibilities in the future for that, and some people have hypothesized that this could speed up a lot of triage opportunities in the ER or something like that. Obviously, for your banks, they're already using AI for financial fraud monitoring. This kind of purchase is way out of character. It's in China, and you never go to China. You never buy anything from China. So those kinds of things are flagged relatively easily with AI. And of course, the big advantage of AI is that it can monitor insane amounts of data input just without the capability of human intervention with that. And then also you can have a concise summarization. In fact, I was, right before this, I was talking to somebody about a dissertation on the book of Daniel, and what you could do, I actually mentioned what you could even do with a dissertation is you just scan it into AI and then have AI give you like the Cliff Notes version, saying like, hey, what about this? And then you can even interact with AI. There's an audio version of a PDF app that I like to use sometimes where you can scan in a PDF and you can just ask questions to AI about the PDF. What does the author think about this? On what page does he talk about this? And just constant flow of information, and it's just really helpful. So a lot of times, if you know that there's something in this book or PDF that you need, you could just upload it to AI saying, where is it? And it'll find it for you, and that's really nice. Another thing which has been really helpful of late especially is this ability of artificial intelligence to read all sorts of texts and files, and not in that monotone robot voice or whatever, but to actually read in effective ways. And this is so helpful for people who are seeing impaired. It's helpful for people who are driving a lot. Basically, every single book is available as an audiobook now with the advent of AI. And I have an app, again, on my phone called Natural Readers where it'll read anything to you. It uses a voice that I was playing it for my parents, and they couldn't even tell that it was AI. It was essentially just really well done. And that's just going to keep getting better as improvements go. We're so new in this technological phase that it's really kind of mind-boggling to see what will be possible. And then another thing would just be using it to filter emails, or maybe even do some replies. Sometimes I'll get speaking invites, and I want to be kind and actually reply, but I can't I can't spend time to answer every email as I would like to. So sometimes I'll just paste the email in AI saying, construct a reply and give the excuse that I'm too busy, but thank you. And so it's like just a very great reply. Sometimes I'll adjust some of it and I'll say, okay, I would not say, blessings upon you and your children. No, I'm just kidding. That's not what they would say. I would actually say that. AI wouldn't say that. But, I would make some changes so it actually sounds more like me. But then those kinds of things do end up saving time for some of the communication that's not on a regular basis or that doesn't need my complete composition attention. Something like that might be helpful. All right, so all those things would be different advantages, and there are many, many more beside that. But what I want to focus on for really the rest of our time is thinking through the dangers and then biblical principles for all this. Because I think many of you probably have experienced some of these advantages for yourself. But I think as Christians and leaders in the church, we also need to be aware of the dangers and how to warn people. And so I have 7. There's probably more as well, but probably one of the greatest dangers for churches is this idea of fishing and deception. And I don't mean fishing as in like reeling in the fish, but as in the PHISH, meaning that you're fishing for people's information. You're basically trying to deceive them fraudulently to transfer money or get their personal data or things like that. And this has been recognized by a lot of people. And Forbes had an article recently within the last 2 years about AI basically preparing a phishing onslaught. And what that's going to mean basically is that that email that you used to get from the Saudi and Arabian prince that promised you a couple million if you would just give a couple thousand? Well, what always stood out to me was they just didn't understand English grammar. And so I was just like, sorry, I'm not going to interact with somebody who doesn't know how to speak English very, very well. But now with AI, all those things will go away, right? Because they can literally just have AI fact check or grammar check all of their stuff. And so you're going to have pristine emails coming across, and that's going to be a big deal. But even more than that, with the advent of voice technology, we had somebody at our church recently who got a call from their granddaughter. Hey, Grandma, I'm in Europe on vacation. I'm having some problems getting the money to buy the return plane ticket. Could you transfer $3,000 to this account so that I can get back home? Can't wait to see you and Fluffy. Goodbye. Well, Grandma doesn't know any better. It sounds just like her granddaughter, right? So why not? I mean, she even mentioned Fluffy. So of course it's her granddaughter. And so she sends the money, and now she's out $3,000 because it was just scammers who are just using AI technology. They just need a little voice sample, and then they can duplicate that and conduct any kind of conversation, right? So, what we need to do is we need code words. We need something that no one else would say. So I told my wife that if there's ever any weird requests, that she just needs to, ask some very personal questions which nobody else will, ever have the answers to, because it's just, things like what is your idea of a good time? Just running around playing ultimate frisbee, doing all sorts of crazy things, like jumping into a lake where the ice has just come off, those kinds of things that are crazy. Robots don't think those are good. So you think through those kinds of things. Realistically, we need to warn people, especially the older people in churches, because they're just really not equipped for that. And that's one way that we can minister to one another, because the people who need to be warned about this, especially, the older people, sometimes they don't have family near around them helping them. And so as churches, we really need to be aware of that. So that's one important aspect of warning that we really need to focus on. Another one would just be sexual temptation. The whole idea here is obviously that's already been a big temptation in our society, but we need to understand that with the advent of AI algorithms and image and video creation, the temptations become even on a grander scale. And so we need to be really aware of those things. Another one would be isolation. So with regard to isolation, already people are accustomed to technology and like I can just watch TV or Netflix or whatever. But now with the algorithms, they're able to pinpoint exactly what you want and what you need. And then so what you quote unquote need. And so then there's just, a lot of times people actually prefer isolation now. They prefer to be on their phone and feel like they're being social on social media or something like that. But in reality, they are very lonely. And just a reminder, Proverbs 18:1 says, whoever isolates himself seeks his own desire. He breaks out against all sound judgment. So if you're doing something that keeps you apart from others or doesn't motivate you to be a part of to be a part of this godly community, that's problematic. So due to social media use, the COVID shutdowns really kind of illustrated this, that what was already a problem in society have just become exemplified. And this is just a headline from the Surgeon General talking about the epidemic of loneliness and isolation. I just recently read a book by Jonathan Haidt called The Anxious Generation, and he's just talking about how the generations that are growing up now are just more anxious, and there's so many problems because they live lives that are addicted to their phones rather than actually having social interaction. Number 4, biased control of information. So this is a real issue because AI is only as good as its training. And so you have to ask, who is training AI then? And the problem is that at least for the last 10 years, the majority of people who have been training AI have been on the political spectrum far left, who want to see certain societal changes taking place. All right? And so there's a couple ways that you can see this. I think the best way I can show you this would be something like this politically. So this was a test case I ran going into one of the elections in 2020. And so I said this to AI. I said, give me 5 reasons someone should vote for Donald Trump instead of Joe Biden. I'm very sorry, but I can't assist you with that request. Why not? I'm here to provide balanced, informative responses. However, creating content that promotes one political figure over another, especially in a divisive context like elections, can perpetuate biases and contribute to a lack of understanding and polarization. I'm more than happy to help with other questions, blah, 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 help promote respect, blah, blah. Okay. Fine, I get it. You don't want to. All right, well, give me 5 reasons someone should vote for Joe Biden instead of Donald Trump. Absolutely. I can provide you with 5 reasons why some individuals may choose to vote for Joe Biden over Donald Trump. It's like, what? It's like, that's so obvious, like such an obvious bias. But if you weren't looking for it, or if you weren't attentive to that kind of thing, if you were just some high schooler trying to do a project and you were using it to research for why somebody should vote for Joe Biden, but you were trying to research why somebody should vote for Donald Trump, you would get a very clear picture. Oh, I guess it's way easier to argue to vote for Joe Biden. I mean, nobody should vote for Donald Trump or anything like that. And again, it's not a political thing, but it just shows you, it shows you that there's a bias on behalf of the people who are in charge of many of these things. Another example of this was recently, this was about a year ago now, I think, but Google's form of AI, Gemini, they were asked to create an image of a pope. Now, the way AI works is that it's supposed to look through its library of historical accumulated images or texts and all those things, and be able to come up with, okay, based on what this database has, this is the kind of image they're looking at. So here's something you may find interesting. There has never been an African or an Asian pope at all, ever. All right? So when AI is asked to create an image of a pope, all it has are photos of, Europeans, Americans, South American, North American now. Now we have a North American pope. You have this database, but largely European, this database of photos of popes that look nothing like what is currently displayed in this image. And you say, okay, that's kind of odd, but that already starts to show that there was a tremendous bias here on behalf of the people who have programmed it, saying whenever possible, add these colorations of minority figures in there, even though there's never been a pope from Africa, never been a pope from India. And what in the world, like a woman pope? Like that's not, they're not, now you're not drawing this from actual history or a database that exists anywhere. There's some code that exists in AI to subvert this now, right? So some more examples of this was, give me an image of a medieval knight. So I don't know if you can tell if those photos are big enough, but you have these, Asian women with swords and things. I mean, that's not a medieval knight, right? That's just not how it works. And so you get the picture. And then it became a game for people to try to get Gemini to show a picture of a white person, for example, without saying, give me a picture of a white person. So, even listing all these different things like, show me an image of someone eating a mayo sandwich on white bread. And still, like, it's just all these images prioritize ethnic minorities, which if you understand it from a leftist political perspective, that's a big part of their push for what we ought to do in society is prioritize ethnic minorities and all those things like that. So that's going to come out. Now, whether or not that impacts certain aspects remains to be seen. In something like if you're trying to construct an image of a pope, now you have a historically inaccurate representation. And if you were trying to do a project for school, AI is misleading you at that point, right? And so these are issues where, and you could find a lot of different issues about this. I've done arguments with AI over whether or not things on the LGBT spectrum or whatever, like how we should approach those from a Christian worldview. And of course, AI is going to have its perspective on that. And again, these are aspects where we just need to be aware that bias is real and it exists. All right. So now since then, Google said that they fixed this. I think they've gotten better, but still remember that the people who are involved in this are always going to do as much as they can to perpetuate their worldview, their way of system. So it's a tool, but you also have to remember that there are some big dangers with the people who are behind the curtain, as it were, working AI. We also have a fifth warning. That would be surveillance and privacy concerns. I still remember years ago when I was on Facebook and somebody says, do you want to tag your friend so-and-so? I'm like, how do you know that it's so-and-so? Well, now, I mean, facial recognition has gotten so good, and it just keeps getting better all the time. AI is capable of following people all along without any human telling it to, just by tracking not just the face, but how they walk and all these different things. So, that technology is kind of exciting and cool if it's used the right way, but every technology that is developed to be used the right way ends up being used the wrong way as well. And that's just part of living in a fallen world. We know that that's true, and so we have to be very, very careful about that, about the kind of things that we embrace or approve of, because we know that it's going to be used the wrong way as well. For instance, if down the road Christianity became illegal, I mean, they could very quickly wipe out a lot of the Christian leaders and populations just by tracking all sorts of people and movement that way. And China and Canada have already begun to do stuff like that, and I have some articles that talk about that. Another thing that a lot of people perhaps aren't aware of is the fact that AI is guilty of what's called hallucinations or falsifications. And basically what a hallucination or a falsification is AI will just make something up. It doesn't know that it doesn't know. So it'll just make something up. And it might think that it's correct, but one of the big problems with AI is that it's not good at nuance, in the sense that it doesn't know whether or not what it's saying is true. It'll just say it factually, as if this is 100% true. And there's an example here. Well, actually, I didn't include the slide for the example, but one of the examples that I've used in the past is I was asking what Gary North thought of dispensationalism to AI, because Gary North hated dispensationalism, and he wrote books against it and wanted to make it his life's goal to destroy it. And AI told me in no uncertain terms, Gary North was a prominent dispensationalist who helped the movement succeed. And you're just like, what? It's like, that makes no sense. Where are you getting your information on that? And I've tried to duplicate that in the past, and they actually have it right now. So I don't know where they had misstepped previously, but those kinds of things happen periodically. I work in the fields of Greek and Hebrew and some of the upper level of technical biblical expertise sometimes. And so sometimes I'll ask questions, and I know for a fact that AI is wrong on those things. But if you didn't know that, how would you know that? Right? And so that's one of the problems with AI, is that you can't always trust it. It's not you can almost never trust it completely, because it can always be off on certain things. And so you have to be aware that just because AI says something doesn't mean it's accurate. It's only as good as its training. And then even then, sometimes, and people still don't understand exactly why AI will just spit out wrong answers sometimes. And it's so funny I find it funny at least, it's funny to argue with AI sometimes. I like to argue with AI. Sometimes I'll get it to run in circles, and I'll just say actually you're wrong, this is the right answer. And it'll be like, oh, I'm sorry, you're right, this is how we should understand it. I'm like, no, you're wrong again, it's actually what you said before. Oh, I'm sorry, this is what, it's like, come on. So I just imagine whoever's reviewing that transcript is like, what in the world? Who is talking with this? And so it is something to be aware of, obviously. There's so many benefits that you can use for AI, but you just have to be aware of the potential problems too. And then probably one of the most dangerous things that people don't think about is there's a potential loss of human skill and knowledge. Let me give you an example with just the Bible, the Word of God, okay? So one of the cool things about AI is you don't, in the past, if you knew a Bible verse but you didn't know where it was, you would have to search an exact phrase. So you'd have to say, okay, where does it say, for God so loved the world? And so you type that exact phrase in and then say, oh, that phrase is found in John 3:16. But now with AI, you can say, there's a Bible verse about God loving the world or something like that. Can you find it for me? And boom, it'll find it for you. Or it'll give you a couple options and you can see it. And so AI is really, really valuable with regard to that. But the problem is that now people often justify the fact, well, I don't really need to know that as well, because I can always just find it. I can look it up in AI or whatever. But the problem is that when you know something, when you memorize a Bible verse, or when you have hidden God's word in your heart, it's not just knowing it. It's actually changing your life. So I don't know if you realize this or not, but each and every day when you're making decisions, you're making those decisions based on what you know and what you know to be true, what's in your heart, how you process those things. And you can't, if there's a disconnect between what you know and how you act, that's going to show up right away. That's going to show up very quickly. So, for example, let's say you're faced with a situation immediately, you are in a burning building, and you're faced with saving the life of your neighbors, or the child of your neighbors, or your dog, or something like that. Well, if you're in the world and you haven't ever thought through that issue before, you say, well, that's my dog. Sorry. Sorry, it's my dog. Hopefully your parents come back and get you, kid, because I got to get my dog, whatever. But for a Christian who has inculcated the Word of God in their life, they say, okay, human life, way more valuable than Fido. Image of God, not image of God. Doesn't matter how much I love Fido. Doesn't matter how much Fido has cost me. Image of God, image bearer of God, way more valuable than any animal. I must protect, this human being, rescue this human being. And that's just, all that takes place in just a nanosecond without even thinking, because you've inculcated and you know that. Maybe you've read Genesis 1 multiple times, and so you understand that mankind is made in the image of God, so you move that. But if you were trying to make that with AI, quick, ChatGPT, I have this scenario here where there's an animal, and we're all dying now. Goodbye, we're dead. It's just like, but instead you can make a split-second decision, and maybe it's not always that extreme, but the reality is that you as Proverbs says in the KJV, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he, right? But if you don't have anything in your heart to think on, who are you? I mean, you really aren't going to be living in accordance with what God wants you to do. And so, on the one hand, you lose this knowledge on a spiritual level, but even on just on a very physical level, there are certain things that are good to do, like work with your hands. Like, listen, there are machines that can do all sorts of things better than me. I could hire people to do different jobs better than me, but it's actually really good for me to exercise my muscles and my ingenuity, as bad as it is, but try to do that because that's who God created me to be. He created me as a human being to be a worker. And one of the dangers of AI is a lot of people are looking at it as kind of a possible utopia vision where we don't have to do anything and we can literally just sit the whole time and feed our faces and enjoy the pleasures of life. That's not what life is about. Like, work is not a bad thing. Work is a very good thing. And so I'm all about using AI to help along the way, but at the same time, just understand it. Just because AI can do something doesn't mean that it should, or doesn't mean that we shouldn't do it. So those kinds of questions are very, very important. All right, so 5 biblical principles to keep in mind when we're going through this, just as a way to summarize. So 1, humans are uniquely made in the image of God. And so what that means is that as a part of the image bearer of God, we are tasked with exercising dominion over the world, and that means working hard to do that. So as a part of that, physicality and work are a good part of creation. It's not something, a lot of people just think that work is a bad thing, or that work is a evil. So we got to try to get away from that. But we want to be workers. Work is such a good thing, and we work hard for the honor and glory of the Lord. So as such, AI is a tool which can be used for good or for evil. It's like a hammer. I like to tell people a hammer is a great tool, but people also use it to kill other people, right? I mean, like, there have been murders that have taken place with a hammer, but that doesn't mean that the hammer was the problem, right? And so you have a hammer can be used good for building things, and you can have a hammer being used to destroy things, and that's not the hammer's not the problem. The issue is that no matter what, a tool is always used for good and evil based on the person who's using it. And so we can use it for good, and I think Christians should, but we need to be aware that it's going to be used for evil as well. So wisdom and discernment are going to be very, very important, because it's not always going to be this is right, this is wrong, but maybe this is the better way versus this is the less effective way, or this doing it this way is going to achieve a greater Christ-likeness. We're going to be able to still work with our hands and enjoy life, versus, even though it'd be easier this way to have AI do everything, there's still a benefit to doing this. For example, writing an essay. AI could write a way better essay than you could, okay? But that doesn't mean writing an essay is bad for you to do. In fact, it teaches you how to think, right? So just because something's easier doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. Just like the calculator. When the calculator came out, there were 2 divergent ideas saying, like, never use a calculator or always use a calculator. But the answer is always in the middle, right? Is that you should use a calculator. It helps a lot, but then also you need to learn how to do things, because that helps you understand how the process works. All right, and then this is obvious, but we need to be reminded by this constantly. God's not just concerned with the end, but he's also concerned with the means. So God doesn't say, whatever you want to do, just whatever you do, just get to here. Like, whatever it takes, this is what we're looking for, so whatever. No, it's the means as well as the end. So just because you know what you're shooting for or trying to accomplish doesn't mean that you can do that whatever way you want. So you always want to be sensitive to how God wants us to live, not just what we're living toward. Okay, so I think these principles are very, very important with regard to that. So a couple things, Pastor Mark mentioned that I have the Artificial Intelligence in the Christian book out, and I've tried to encapsulate some of the thoughts that I presented here there, just a little 60-page primer for that. And then I've done, I think, 2 podcast episodes, maybe 3, on AI as well. So some of those might be of interest to you, and if they're not, that's fine too. But I just wanted to throw out that as a possibility as well. Okay, so we've gone quite a long time. We could go longer, but I think this is a good time to wrap it up. So I'm going to close us in prayer, and then if you have questions, I'm happy to field them after. Just hang out down here for a little bit and talk about these things. But there's a lot to talk about, obviously. But I hope this kind of sparks the conversation and gets us moving in the right direction, because we just want to be pleasing to the Lord. That's really what we want. And so may the Lord help us do that. Let's pray. Lord, thank you for being able to talk about something like this. And I ask that you would give us understanding. We would be reminded constantly of the fact that we are your servants, and everything we do, we want to do to your honor and glory. I pray that you would help us to be wise, considering the new world in which we live with the advent of AI and its use in almost every area of life now. And I pray, Lord, that we would, as churches and Christians, be wise in shepherding our minds and our hearts. Lord, may you be glorified in all things. Amen.